tuned for today's episode of Breaking the Biz, an informative podcast where we dive into the world of entertainment by interviewing seasoned professionals who have made their mark in the industry. Gain invaluable insights as they share their personal journeys, offering advice on navigating the dynamic landscape of the entertainment industry. Whether you're an aspiring actor, musician, filmmaker, author, animator, or any creative soul, tune in for expert career guidance, insider tips, and first-hand accounts on breaking into the entertainment industry. Get ready to unlock the secrets behind successful careers and fuel your own passion for the limelight. Please remember to like this video and to subscribe to our channels for more great conversations.
Greetings from Breaking the Biz, brought to you by Yes I Can Unity Through Music and Education. I'm William Felber, your navigator through the intriguing universe of the entertainment industry, as revealed by the visionaries and creators who bring it to life. Stay tuned as we delve into diverse insights from the forefront of entertainment, hearing from pioneers, creators, and agents of change. Prepare for a journey filled with tales of innovation, resilience, and the undying quest for artistic brilliance.
Welcome to Breaking the Biz podcast with the Yes I Can crew. We've got an amazing guest with us tonight. We have Josh Monroy, who is a two-time Grammy Award-winning producer, engineer, and mixer, signed to Sony Music Publishing. He has an impressive over 35 million streams on Spotify alone for indie artists that he has developed and produced. Josh is a multi-instrumentalist that plays keys, guitars, drums, ready to create a unique sound that defines you. No cookie cutter stuff here, 20 years of experience in the music biz with over 15 platinum and gold records. He has a background in urban, alternative, rock, and pop music, working over there at Studio 10 to give bands and artists an opportunity to sound as good as they deserve to sound. Some of the artists that you have worked with, kind of super impressive artists there. Luda, Justin Bieber, Outkast, Elton John, Travis Barker. I mean, the list goes on. So I want to thank you, Josh, for making time for us tonight.
Thanks for having me, guys. My pleasure.
So my first question to you, before we get into how you broke into this biz, is when did you fall in love with music yourself?
Oh, I mean, some of my earliest memories, honestly, are from music. And I remember my mom's a single mom, and I remember like 2 years old on the couch in our first apartment together. One of my first core memories, is like watching music videos on MTV with my mom, So, but yeah, I mean, I think it started then. And then later on in my life, maybe 10, 11 years old, my dad played me Jimi Hendrix, and he played a song All Along the Watchtower, and just something hit me. It was like, it was like a chemical response. I'd never felt anything like it before. And it was just like, I could feel the music, like just going and moving through me. And I think right then is like when I knew it was more than just something to listen on the radio, that it can really drive and influence you and make you feel things. And so, yeah, I kind of like the seed was planted to start, do something in music then.
A little Jimi Hendrix riff. I love it. Talk me through in high school. Were you in a band? Obviously multi-instrumentalist, you kind of do it all. When did you start picking up instruments and how did that all work out?
Yeah. So I started playing just soon after that, actually. I think that Hendrix episode led me to, like, my dad was like, "Oh, you like that? Okay, let me get you a guitar," and he was a guitar player. But in high school, I started playing guitar maybe 12, 13, something like that. Wasn't ever super good until later on in life, and there's plenty other better guitar players than me, but yeah, in high school, I played in bands and just like really, really crappy bands, in the 90s. There was just, if you could play a couple of chords in high school, you were in a band with somebody. But yeah, nothing ever went anywhere with those bands. But I just knew that, that's what I wanted to do. So I had a feeling, and I actually discovered Full Sail through just like talking to some high school band buddies. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I initially started the journey.
Okay, talk me through that journey with going to Full Sail. So you graduate high school and then you embark on Full Sail. Give our audience just a little background on what Full Sail is.
Yeah, so Full Sail is a music production university. They do a lot of things now, film and game design and all kinds of stuff like that. It's kind of like an entertainment university. It's really cool. You should check it out. It's on the expensive side, and it was when I went as well. But I got some loans, and I knew like right out of high school, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I was actually like a straight A student in high school. I was kind of a nerd and really enjoyed learning and went on like academic trips and my junior and sophomore years. And I was actually going to go into the medical field originally. And I had a scholarship to a place called Berry College in North Georgia, which is a big like pre-med kind of place. And I mean, I had my whole future lined up, or I should say, my granddad and my mom had my whole future lined up, and they thought that's what I was gonna do, and I went and I loved it, but something just told me like this, you need to do what you love, and I come from a not a poor family, I would say, but I mean, we were definitely of humble means, like. We were penny pinchers. My mom was, like I said, single mom and stuff. So she worked her butt off. But we just made it happen, and it's like with any dream, there was no such thing as YouTube back then, so there wasn't the options that you have today to learn or to do something like this where I could join and talk to someone. So these types of things are very important to me, and like I guess telling my story, it's nothing, I guess it's special, it's just a series of a lot of hard work and being lucky in the right place at the right time, but knowing what I was doing. And that's kind of how I found Full Sail as well, on a painting job with a buddy that I used to play guitar with. And it was just like, oh, you should go to Full Sail, man. Check out. I was like, what is that? It's the weirdest name of a school. And he explained it, and I started looking into it, and that was it. My mom and I drove down. It's in Orlando, Florida. And we drove down I'm from Georgia originally. And we toured the place, and it was like, whoa, you're in a recording studio for like, this is awesome as a class. So it was a dream come true. But there's so many other routes you can take these days. But yeah, that was the route I took, and it led me to where I am. So, and there's no complaints here.
And I love it how you mentioned, initially sometimes people like to pre-plan out your life, like going in that medical field. And when indeed you said, I'm going to go this route and I'm going to pursue music production, what were your parents' and your mom's initial thought there?
My mom supported me. My mom supported me wholeheartedly. She was like, we had a very special, close bond. Her being a single mom, she had me very young, and and so we were just super close. My granddad was pissed because it was kind of like the first person to go to college, and I'm all my family's military people, and you go to the Army because they didn't have any other, what else are they going to do or whatever. So they would go in the Army and go in the Marines, something like that. But my granddad was really upset with me. He actually didn't talk to me for almost 6 months. And he was like my dad, and so that was my mom's father. We were super close. And it wasn't until I won a Grammy, my first Grammy, and during Ludacris's acceptance speech when we won Rap Album of the Year, he thanked me on live TV, and my granddad was watching it, and not until, and that was, maybe 5 or 6 years after I had graduated and been in the music business. That's when he was like, all right, I think you made the right decision.
a Grammy is definitely one to go, okay, you're in the right place. You're doing it. So let's talk Full Sail. So in Full Sail, you study music production. At that time, are you playing drums, bass, all of the other instruments, or initially just still guitar?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, when I was there, I was more of a drummer then. I just really picked it up and loved it. I had a couple of guitars that, I've always fiddled around on guitar or whatever. But yeah, I was studying audio engineering, and wasn't really like much of a beat maker or a producer or anything like that then. just making really crappy music still and just learning the ropes. And that's where I focused on. I didn't know what my path would be. I didn't know I was going to be a producer. I thought I was maybe going to work in film scoring, or like something like that was really intriguing to me while I was in school. So I just always kept an open mind, and just I loved learning. That was the nerd side of me, and like, and just I just loved learning. And music is such a cool, not only the theory of everything, but like music production and audio recording is just it's magical. It really is. Like when you think about analog recording and how some of those things work and whatnot. So I was just making really, keeping an open mind, kind of seeing where I was going to go. But yeah, playing drums mostly. I lived in an apartment, so my drums kit honestly had to like go on, I just had pads, and it wasn't I wasn't playing with anyone or playing out or anything, just kind of like learning DAWs and learning Pro Tools and that sort of thing.
Okay. So what's kind of cool is also when you went to this university, Full Sail, you didn't go there going, I'm going to be a Grammy Award winning producer. You kind of went there with the mindset of, there's plenty of things for me to learn, plenty of different avenues for me to go into once I learn this trade, which, it's very important to know sometimes you know exactly what you want to do. And then there's other times you have to have that career exploration and figure it out. So when you're in there, you're learning, did you do Ableton, Pro Tools? Is that all of it?
So, man, Ableton wasn't even like a thought. You're talking 2000. I'm old, man. I'm 41. So, this was 2001. I was in Full Sail. So there was no such thing as Ableton that I know of. Maybe there was some older, but yeah, they taught us actually Cubase, and and it was just like MIDI wasn't where it is now. It was very like, I mean, people were using MIDI, don't get me wrong, but I mean like inside of a program like Ableton or Logic or Fruity Loops, FL Studio, like what it's capable of doing now. It wasn't thought of that way until like 2008, really. I remember being in the studio with Ludacris, and we had this like really famous production duo called Dre and Vidal. And they made hits for everyone in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, in the hip hop and R&B world. But it was a partnership. It was two guys, and I remember one of them was an analog guy, and this was, we're setting up an MPC, we're connecting physical MIDI cables to different, synthesizers that we rented, and I'm talking hardware synthesizers, no plugins here, and we're getting, making all of the machines talk to each other through MIDI code and MIDI messages. And the other guy comes busting in the studio, man. We've been setting up for like 2 hours or something like that. And he's like, man, I already made 3-4 beats, and he's in there. And we're like, how? And he's like, I just got something called Logic. And this is like the first time I'd ever heard of it, maybe like 2007, 2008. And I actually had heard of Logic, but it was something so obscure. Like you couldn't do what this guy was doing. And it just, computers and technology had caught up and reached a point where this guy was just running circles around us. And I think from that moment on, it was like, whoa, you can have a laptop and produce hit tracks on your laptop and open it up the session, and the mix is exactly where it was, a year ago or 60 minutes ago or what. Whereas on the analog hardware stuff, I mean, man, you're writing all these settings down, and you're not talking about LCD touch screens like you have nowadays. You're talking about really crappy, LCD, like I don't even know what it was. I guess it was an LCD screen, but not, it looked like a digital watch, kind of like from the 80s. It was terrible. And the menus sucked, and so there was a lot of manual writing of things down. It was just that was a game-changing moment for sure. I don't know if I answered your question, but I kind of
I love it. I want to talk about, you graduate from Full Sail. Is Full Sail one of those places where they gave you a lead? How did you take the jump and the leap from Full Sail into your first gig?
Yeah, well, I'll tell everyone watching this, man. All those schools say they're going to help you get a job, and we have 90, not knocking any school system or anything like that, but just beware. Everyone's going to tell you whatever they want you to hear to get you in there, and so yes, Full Sail claimed that they were going to help me with all these things, but it was very, very touch and go. I did have a person that like was part of like forget what they called it, but it was like the intern application process, and that's your first foot in the door. And when I graduated, I moved back. I'm luckily from a town or from a place like Atlanta, Georgia, that has a thriving music scene in many genres. Like in the 90s, there was Brendan O'Brien here making all the grunge rock and Stone Temple Pilots and Rage Against the Machine, and all that was going on right here. And then, at the same time, you got Outkast and so many other amazing hip hop artists from Atlanta, and that's changed music. Trap music's, I would say, arguably born in Atlanta, Georgia. But yeah, I mean, so I came back here and I lived with my brother. I scraped by. I just, he let me sleep on his couch, and I would just apply to every studio, and I just knew there was no not doing this in my mind. To me, and I think that's part of it. Mindset is such a huge thing when you're doing something creative, when you're following a dream or following a passion. It's so much about, no one can tell me that I can't do this. Like, if you make up your mind to do something, I promise you, if you stay at it long enough, it will happen, and I think for me, it happened pretty quickly. I got a call call back. I went, I got a good feeling with the people. It was at a place called Tree Sound Studios. It's still a big studio here in Atlanta. It's still up and running. A lot of studios closed in the early or like late 2000s, early 2010s, because of the laptop. And then, home studios boomed and big commercial studios got hit really hard. But Trees survived. They're huge. You can look them up. Tree Sound Studios. I got an internship there, 2002, and about 2004, I was leaving and going to work directly for Ludacris. So about a year and a half, because I didn't start in 2002. I didn't start until like October, so it's most of the year. So
talk me through the introduction, how you met Ludacris and how that happened.
Yeah, so that's another way. It's just a time and a place thing, man. It's funny how life works out sometimes, and it sounds kind of corny, but sometimes there's no. I've heard before. I don't know how much I believe it, but I've heard there's no such thing as a good experience or a bad experience. It's only what you take out of it. And at the moment, what I mean by that is, at the moment I was broke. I couldn't afford gas to even drive home. Interning at a recording studio, depending on what state you're in. Like California, they have to pay you, but in Atlanta, they do not. And I was broke, man. I couldn't hardly put gas in my car. And I was choosing to sleep at the studio, and the studio owner would just like let me crash there. And I would watch over the place. I'd answer phones, like anything. And it's what a better place. What am I going to do? Go home and, pass out to cartoons or, like see my girlfriend, whatever, but it was like, I wanted to be in that studio, and that's what I did. I slept there most nights, honestly, and I'd go home every couple days. Well, one of these times the phone rings, I pick it up. It's Ludacris on the other end. There's no one else to do the session. They trusted me at this point. I was there, and I got put on the session, and so it's just one of those, like, you're feeling so bad for yourself. Like, I can't afford gas and I can't afford this, but it was all for a reason. It was there to put me in that very narrow window of opportunity. And boy, when it hit, it changed my life. And so, we developed a very good rapport and a great relationship together. We're still friends to this day. And, he took me under his wing. He hired me out, and the rest is history. We won Grammys together, and I recorded almost every hit song he did from. I mean, that was our era. I was in the Ludacris, like, he was on every featured song on the radio. You couldn't turn on the radio between 2003 and 2010 and not hear Ludacris.
It's fantastic. I get those, the goosebumps, because it is a hard road to sleep in the studio, to put yourself in a situation. You're not the first individual who told us. We had someone who was cleaning the studios, just trying to make any ends meet. And the producers who were hired went to go eat. And I think it was like Ziggy Marley or someone was inspired at the moment and was like, who can run this? And he did that. And that was his, first Grammy, and, got a credit. So, it is the right place, the right time, but there's something more to it. I think it's the dedication. And like you mentioned, not having a plan B or a C. Sometimes if it's plan A, you go plan A, and you don't give up until you get that plan A. So you do that session, and you kill it. You create that, that relationship. You work with him. Did he take you on, when an artist at that level, do they just go from studio to studio and they bring in their own team? Is that how it works?
Well, that's kind of how he poached me in a way. We met at Tree Sound. I was at Tree, and we worked there for a while, and then we got to be pretty close. We were working on the Chicken and Beer album, which is probably 2003, and at the same time, I was working on the Speakerbox Love Below album, which is like I was recording. I was an assistant engineer, but I was working with Andre 3000 from Outkast and working on Hey Ya, which was one of the biggest songs I think of all time. Arguably, so I was kind of getting my foot in with that, and then now I'm recording Ludacris. And we worked together for a while, for a few months at Tree Sound, maybe 6 months or so, as he's finishing up the album. And he was working he was kind of bouncing around different places in Atlanta. If he's in LA, he's going to go to some studio in LA. But he was kind of just always with a different engineer, and he wanted to just kind of have his sound, and he wanted to have his person that was in charge of all of his files, because his career was really blowing up, and he was about to become the feature guy. It was like him and Lil Wayne and T-Pain. And and it was just at that moment he needed a person, and we had that rapport, and he was building a studio. So he invited me to his house. He threw a party, and he invited me to his house. And was like, hey man, come to the house, come hang out, outside of work. And then, I'm also building a studio. Why don't you come check it out and let me know what you think or whatever. So I did that. And it was just like surreal. I thought I was in a movie, I'm just like, I'm in Ludacris's house at a party. This is crazy, and I gave him some feedback on the studio and whatnot, and he hired me, but it was kind of like he was trying out, like he had like 2 or 3 other guys, so he'd hire me 1 week and then the next. So it wasn't like super steady at first. I still had to have a couple other gigs, but I was doing it. I was a freelance recording engineer, and sometimes I'd go and I'd even run live sound. That was a great way to make cash money at the end of the night. I'd do a front of house gig at a bar, and I'd get a free beer tab, and I'd get a free food, and I'd get, that kind of thing. So it was like food and money and like what else, but, and then I'd go work for Chris the next week. But he was trying out a couple of different guys, and luckily, like I don't know if it was my personality or like I think it was a little bit of both with that and my technical abilities. I really knew microphones and compressors, and we just got a great sound, and we worked really well, and it was undeniable, I think. So he was like, all right, man, that's it. I want you to come down. And he actually, this is crazy, but he actually bought me a house across the street from him after the studio was finished. And it was his house, but he let me stay there, rent free and stuff. And it was just like, just so I could, like, I would go pick him up from the airport some days. Like I would literally pick him up at the airport, drive him, and we were right by the airport at the time. That's where he was living. And we'd go straight to the studio from the airport, start working. From that point, it was just like, then I'm flying with him here and flying with him there. And just, then it wasn't really, he liked working at his place. And if we had to be on the road recording, then we would, but he really built his place, and it was comfortable to him, and it was his booth and his mic and his gear. And that's where he preferred to record.
I love it. And you mentioned something that's interesting, because we talk about technology. He ended up being that feature guy, where the guest appearance on the Usher and, all of these different tracks. At that time, did an artist have to go into the studio and lay down their part, or could you transfer files? Um,
Yeah, that's a good question, man. It was hard to transfer files. It really was. I mean, it took the internet speeds just were not there. I mean, it's like I'm a dinosaur. I feel so old when I start talking about some of this stuff, man. But
I'm right there with you, so you don't feel like a dinosaur.
I mean, I literally burned DVDs of data. So like then we would start using DVD Rs. So you would actually be able to write to a DVD. You kind of consider DVDs as just only a movie or something, but it's just a file format really, or in a medium. But yeah, so we would use a DVD R, which was allow us to record onto the DVD, and that would get us like I think it was like 4 gigs or something like that. It was still so small, but yeah, I would have to burn a DVD disc and mail that sucker to another place. That was for years and years. And before the DVDs got big, I mean, I used to have to split up sessions onto 4 CDs, man. CDRs were just like the bane of my existence, and when I was at Tree Sound, because yeah, your FedEx would come every day to pick up session files and shipped all over the world, to different clients around the world. And sometimes one session would be 4 or 6 CDs. And it was like so tedious remembering because you'd have to split the session up, and God forbid you missed a file or something, and now it's gone all the way across to London or Miami or LA or whatever. And now they're missing a file and your name's on it. That's not good.
I love it. So you win a Grammy with Ludacris. At the same time, you mentioned working on Hey Ya with Andre, 2000, which I agree with you. What a huge song.
Yeah.
Is that the other Grammy win?
Yeah. That was the first Grammy. I was just an assistant engineer, but I did so much there. I mean, we, recording and setting up and doing so much, and just to be a part of that project was awesome. And it was a 3-month long project, and I got to know Andre pretty well as well. And he was a really cool guy. Just awe-inspiring, really. So creative and so cool, and just being a part of that and working on, I mean, my favorite songs on the album are the ones I worked on. And it's not even because I worked on them. It's just, we worked on the best songs. I don't know. We did Hey Ya, we did Prototype, which that guitar part's iconic, I think. And we did She Lives in My Lap, Happy Valentine's Day. If there's anybody out there familiar with that album, if not, go listen to The Love Below by Outkast. But yeah, it was really cool. Prototype, such a vibey song, one of my favorites. But just Andre refused. Actually, Andre played that guitar. If you want to go and listen to it, he played that in one take, but he had just learned to play guitar. So we literally spent 9 hours that day with him on loop playing that guitar until he could play it from start to finish. And it was a tedious day, to say the least. We were kind of getting a little annoyed, but it's a cool story to have now, where it's like he actually played that from start to finish, which is not how we usually record. It's very compartmentalized for each section in the studio. So
would you say, artists obviously like Ludacris and we'll get into Justin Bieber and all these other artists, what is it about them that makes them superstars? Is it the work ethic?
Yeah, I would say that's it. I mean, that's a big one. Work ethic. No one that's in that celebrity arena is gotten there because they're lazy. It's especially the mega stars. There's people that come and go, but like the mega stars will outwork everyone in the room. They're up before everybody else. They're the last ones to leave. They're leaders, and that, I think that's what it's about. You got to know how to lead people, and no one, if you're going to be running that, if you're someone like Ludacris, who is going to outwork him on his team? It's like he has to be the one inspiring his team to work harder so they make him more money and work for him when he's not working. And I think that's what it's about. And I've really tried to embody that and learn from his, he's a great businessman. He's had a lot of ventures. Some have failed. Some have just kind of fizzled. Some have been huge. He's got he's 4 seasons deep on a Netflix show called Karma's World that I was a part of starting as well. And it's the first iteration was a website that was meant to be like a hip hop version of like Schoolhouse Rock, basically. And so it's just really cool to see the changes and the evolution of that idea. And it's a great businessman. I've learned a lot from the dude. But yeah, I'm sorry, I lost my
No,
train of thought.
I love it. Talk me through how important networking has been to your success.
Yeah, I mean that's that age-old saying. It's who you know, right? So, and it definitely is. With the right person making an intro for you can mean all the difference, and it's still important to me, just as important to me today. In networking, I have bands now. Like what I do is I do artist development, so I like to see a project from start to finish, and I mean from the branding, the marketing, the songwriting, the production. I oversee the whole career of an artist. I don't really like to call it management, but we do like label services. My wife is a digital marketer, and she helps create campaigns for the marketing campaigns and create marketing assets for artists. But we, I think, that's where my love lies. And am I answering your question right now? Actually,
Yeah. You're flowing. I love it.
All right, cool. But yeah, so that's kind of, that's what we do nowadays. That what was the initial question?
Was networking, but
yeah.
Like you mentioned, you obviously working with artists, you get a name, and then now obviously you put that passion into creating an artist. And we talk about how important managers are, producers are. So many people think, oh, well, I got Pro Tools or I got this and I could do it at home. Obviously, having somebody like yourself takes a song to the next level. Same thing with when you have experience like you have, exactly what you need for branding and how to keep an artist relevant and deals. There are a lot of shady people in that industry. And if you don't have the right people behind you, it takes a village, it takes a team. And I love that you mentioned you got your wife in the mix too, making sure. And let me ask you, is it due to like, not a control thing, but is it just because you are so well versed in all of the different aspects of what it takes to make an artist successful that, that's what is, driving you right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a natural evolution of my talents, and I kept running into roadblocks where, being signed to Sony, I'd moved to LA, I had done all these songs. It's what I call the ringer, the writing ringer. I don't know, it's my own personal, it's a sucky name, but it's just when you go to LA and as a songwriter producer and you're signed to a major publisher, they put you in this loop of just like you're writing songs 5 days a week. Every day you're writing songs with a new artist, a new writer, and it's just a carousel or a revolving door, or whatever analogy you want, of the new writer, the new artist, the new guy from London, the new chick from Australia. And I just got burnt out, but what it did for me was like really sharpen my skills, and it made me be able to create a song on the fly, in the dark, no eyes closed, upside down, like any way you can do it. I've made a song, and I've produced records and written records, and I think LA is you want to be a great songwriter and you want to be a great producer, you got to go to LA, in my opinion, at least for a time, if you want to be in that mix. And I did that, and what I started doing is I just met a lot of really great artists there, and I just kind of started falling in love with artist development, because labels don't do that anymore. That used to be a whole division of record labels that is just not there anymore, and they outsource that to TikTok now, to Instagram, to what it used to be YouTube, or it's gone through many iterations, but now it's TikTok or whatever, and they outsource it to people like me that produce and develop an awesome song, blow up an artist, and then they just come in and put their money behind it. But how it started was the fact that I would meet these really great artists. This is maybe, I don't know, 2013, let's say. And I'd meet a really dope artist in LA, and I'd be like, okay, let's do a project. And I, super passionate about it. Maybe, I would even do projects where I didn't get paid still, at that point in my career. Like if it was awesome and they didn't have a lot of money, I would just be like, cool, make me a partner. we're 50-50 on the songs now, and you don't have to pay me at all, and they've paid off really well. And sometimes they never did anything, but the ones that have paid off really well. And I just, started hitting these walls where I would be so passionate about a project, but just no clue how to. I'd give it to my publisher at Sony, and they'd be like, "Oh, this is really cool." Okay, well, can you do something? Can you? Well, no, we're not a distributor. We're not, like, we can maybe place it on a television show if the opportunity comes up. But besides that, fingers crossed. And so I just started meeting people that worked at Spotify, that were managers, that were booking agents, that were photographers, music video directors. And I think it's just like expanding and becoming a person that could kind of I'm a big picture kind of person anyway. Like, I'm a planner, I'm very organized, I'm very thorough. So like, project management is essentially what it is, and it's just like, I can go micro with, like, I can write the song, I can help with the lyrics, I can, produce the record, whether it's rock or it's hip hop, whatever. Then I can also like bring in this awesome guitar. With 20 years in the game, it's just like I got somebody for everything. It's really what it is. So I've just met enough people in my life and I do good business. I pay people what they should be paid. I don't screw people over. You couldn't find anyone that would say I've never made them money. If they've worked with me, I'm gonna get you paid. I'm gonna make you money. So I've always tried to do right by people and be a good person first and foremost. Treat people how I want to be treated. But yeah, man. Now at this point, I'm kind of like playing. Like, I just want to. It's for fun. I mean, I still got to pay my rent. Don't get me wrong, or I'm paying my house note now, but it's different. I really search for the unique in people, and even people that are maybe below me. If I think, like, so to speak, like, I don't think like that, but I'm just saying, like, below where I'm at, it's like, I think that, like, I can bring something and help everyone. And, things like this as well. It's just like, it's important, I think, as creatives, that we help each other and give our experience and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I answered the question, but yeah, man.
You did. And you answered the other one too, because I think that is a great example of networking in its finest. You're meeting people naturally. It's organic. You mentioned you've got that Rolodex where you could call someone for anything or anything. One of the things, and I totally agree with you. I love the fact that you're giving back and passing along the knowledge to the next generation of creatives. And on that note, you're obviously giving mentorship here. I think every piece of knowledge that you're dropping is an important piece to understand to be successful. Did you have a mentor other than Full Sail? Is there someone else that comes to mind when I say mentor?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great question. Yeah, Full Sail definitely was not a mentor in any way, and no one there was. I just, but I know what you mean. But yeah, there was a couple people. One's huge now. I worked under Rick Beato. I don't know if anyone's familiar with him, but he is enormous. He has millions and millions of subscribers on YouTube. Very successful on Instagram and all that stuff. But he does interviews, and check him out, Rick Beato, Beato. He worked at Tree Sound. He was a producer. He was in a band, Billionaire maybe, or something like that, I think they were called in the late 2000s. But he became a producer, and he taught me how to record drums, and he really, like, showed me how, like, what preamps to use and why he used them, and it was really, really awesome watching him. And also another one of his underlings was this guy named Billy Hume. And they're all out of Atlanta. They're all Atlanta natives here. Billy Hume was his engineer, and I ended up working for Billy when I left Tree Sound, and in that little in between phase of like not being full-time with Luda yet, and I still needed some extra work and stuff. Billy gave me a room at he had a house. I think he called it the house, the studio, and it was like a 3-story house. His studio was in the basement. The middle floor was like the lounge with like a B room, and then the upstairs rooms were a vocal booth and another little Studio C kind of thing, with just like a small computer microphone setup, for like hip hop vocals and stuff like that. But Billy was a great guy, man. Nothing but beautiful things to say about him. I still set up my mixes as Billy taught me to do. I still teach that. I do some mentorship in Atlanta as well, and in LA as well. We had a mentorship program. And yeah, man. So I still teach their setups the same way. I still teach how Rick taught me to do drums the same way. David Bottrell as well. These are all like more so, and Ludacris, man. Ludacris was definitely a mentor, but on a different side. Like he kind of taught me about like being more business. Weirdly enough, like he taught me a lot about how to maneuver and be a good businessman. And I think Chris's honesty and his character, I don't think anyone can really again find anything bad to say about that man. Like he only helps his community. He only does great things for the people around him, and I think he's a stand-up guy, But yeah, I've been fortunate with that, and I don't know if it's luck or it's just the way that the world works, where being on the same wavelength as people, just you get what you put out. We'll just put it like that for everybody that's listening. Put out good vibes and be a good person, do the right thing, even when it's hard. You do it, and it's gonna come back to you. So tenfold, whatever you want to say, it's going to come back to you in a big way.
Love it. Is there a mantra that you live by daily?
A mantra? Not really, man. I think it changes. I think we go through seasons of life. Right now I'm like, I'm entering the old man phase of my life, where I'm like, I've got a wife. I'm married 3 years ago. So I waited a while to get married, but the house, I'm being a homeowner, stuff like that. So it's hard juggling everything now. And I think that's where I'm at in my life. So I think organization is kind of where I'm at, where it's like, how do I split my time, fulfill my creative and financial work, load, my role as a husband, my role as a homeowner, and like the things I want to do with my house. And I like being outside, man. I cut my own grass. I like to cook, there's things like that kind of keep me sane, but as a mantra, I just think, do good, be good. I guess that would be it.
Love it.
Overall.
Is there any artist that you've been starstruck working with, or in just total awe?
Yeah, man. A couple times actually. Elton John was one, big time. I worked with Whitney Houston. I was just like kind of a passerby, like an assistant engineer. I wasn't really super involved with her, but one of probably my biggest one ever, and the only time I was really like, holy crap, was I was a huge, and still am, a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan. And I got to work with Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlain, who are the lead singer and the drummer of Smashing Pumpkins, on a project called Zwan from the early 2000s. It didn't last long. Smashing Pumpkins was broken up at the time, if anyone knows who they are, but they were broken up at the time. And, they started this side project with a few of the members called Zwan, and it was more of an acoustic thing. Super cool. I did a live recording with them and was just like, I felt like Billy Corgan was like a giant. I just remember like in my head, and he's like maybe 6'2", he's pretty tall, but I just remember I felt like a child, I felt like a little kid looking up to just a giant person and just like, okay, whatever you say, sir, that's how I felt. And it really kind of brought me full circle back to my childhood.
I love it. I love it. What is the biggest piece of advice you would give to your younger self with all that you have learned and experienced in this industry?
Man, save your money. That would be it. Save your money, invest your money. Don't blow your money. I had so many opportunities to have just like probably what would be financial freedom at this time, at this point in my life, that I screwed up for myself. And I'm right where I'm meant to be. The lessons are learned. Hindsight's 2020, whatever you want to say. But like, dang, man, like, yeah, I had some financial moments where I had some windfalls of cash. Like signing to Sony would be one of them, where it was like, poor boy from Georgia, man, and I got a $75,000 check, dude. Like, I'm out in the streets. I'm taking the girls out, like we're doing things and buying friends dinners and just stupid stuff where it was fun, yes. But man, it's just if I would have bought a duplex, bought a second house, like I could have been so far ahead. So yeah, definitely save your money, guys. Learn the tax code. And it's really boring stuff, but it's stuff that it's going to save you so much money. And like, you might not look as cool going out and buying drinks for everybody, but I'll tell you what, man, you're going to be glad when you're in your 30s and you can almost retire, and that's the thing. That's the difference. And now I'm in my 40s and far away from that. So it's like, hey, if I could have learned those lessons in my 20s and made a couple of different moves, financially, and I'm not hurting by any means, but man, it would be a world of difference. I'll tell you that.
One of the things that you mentioned is quite interesting. And, when we think of artists, we don't realize how many hands are behind the scenes with writing the music. You look up to some of these artists, but you don't realize that there's a team of people writing a lot of those songs with them. And one of them that comes to mind is like the Black Eyed Peas, Where's the Love? And you see a Grammy and you see like 15 people contributing to the writing. Has that been your experience too? There are a lot of people in the writing, or when someone comes to you from Sony Publishing, are you like the main sole writer, or is there a lot of collaboration, I guess is what my question is.
Yeah, I think songs go through a lot of phases, especially with these big publishers and big major labels. You might get this person started it, this producer touched it, they sent it to XYZ writer, they wrote something cool, but the label only likes the chorus. So then they take the chorus and then they send it to somebody else and, hey, can you write this? And can you write, so yeah, that's definitely the case. And that's kind of how there ends up being 12 people on a song that should take 4 people at most, and it's just because the label wants to let all these major people touch it. And then, and by the end of the day, it's like, what does this person write? 1 lyric, 2 lyric, and that's honestly what it ends up coming down to. Everyone has these tiny slivers of publishing. And it's not really very fair to the writers either. So I don't know. I think some change is coming with all that. And another thing I've seen is like with producers, like nowadays in hip hop, I mean, there'll be 4 or 5 producers in the room in their own little camp, and they'll get together and somebody's got a loop, somebody adds an 808, somebody adds something else, and then they just kind of, they all just use their, and this is the network. This is come back to networking again. Are you stronger by yourself with holding 100% of nothing that no one's paying for? Or are you going to go and take 10% of something where you're with 3, 4 other guys or, girls, whatever. And you might only get but this person over here has got to connect to this XYZ artist or this A&R at this record label. So it's kind of like, I say, when you're starting out, you take everything. You say yes to everything. And you don't have to say yes a second time, but the first time you say yes to every session you possibly can. Because you never know who someone's going to end up being. You stay humble and like that person that's sitting on the couch that only said 2 words that whole time in 5 years might be the biggest producer, writer, A&R at a record label, whatever. You never know who they're going to end up being. So I always treated everybody with respect, showed up, said yes to a lot of different stuff. And, sometimes it sucked, and you just can't wait to get out of there. But sometimes it was life-changing. So, yeah, man.
I love that advice. And I'm so glad you mentioned it. What is the biggest door that opened from a yes, you saying yes to something?
Yeah, I think, I was able to, I think it's about opportunity, man, like recognizing, so everyone wants money, and money can't be the focus of why we're doing this. Everybody's got to make money. Everybody's got to pay their rent and put food on the table. Absolutely. But I think when you start thinking outside of just monetary value, experience is a form of payment. It really can be. if you choose to think of it that way, and it has to suit you, the person receiving that. But yeah, experience can be, but I think the biggest thing that comes to mind to answer your question before I go off on a tangent, I think it's someone offered me a gig. It was this R&B artist, Tank. Very, people know who he is if you're in R&B and stuff like that. He's like, man, come be my engineer. And this is after I moved to LA, and I was like, I don't do that anymore. Like I'm here writing, I'm producing, I'm signed to Sony now, da da da. He knew me from my Ludacris days. I was like, but here's an opportunity in my head. I'm like, wait, I'm not gonna say no completely to this. What I said was, look, I needed a studio at the time. So I said, look, how about this? I'll find your engineer, I'll hire him, I'll do all the work on that, make sure the studio's good. Let me use the studio on off time while I'm trying to find a studio. I'll find you an engineer, yada. And then boom, before you know it, I was managing a studio. It turned into a whole studio management position. He ended up owning two studios side by side. I got my own studio out of it, for a hugely discounted rate. I was paying, 50% of what the studio was worth. And I was right next door and started a whole business where in LA I was managing engineers. So, from that we started engineering for Jamie Foxx, became one of our clients, personal engineer. So it was just like setting up personal engineers for, A-list clients. And, just by having some foresight to say, you know what, there's an opportunity here. You don't want to just close the door on yourself. You know what I mean? And even if you don't want it. So, I think there's, saying yes is also means kind of saying no sometimes, I guess. But it's like you can kind of like, you can maneuver. And in this business, again, networking, respect of like, they knew I was going to find somebody based on my reputation. They knew that person was going to be great and they trusted me. So
I love it. I love it. Perfect example. All right. Last 5 minutes. I'm going to open it up to students' questions. Logan, go ahead.
How's it going? So first of all, I just want to say I appreciate your work. I appreciate what you do. Sorry, my camera's not on right now because I'm sick and I'm a mess. But
good,
I'm also a drummer as well. I've been playing drums for about like I'd say like 16 years now. And I actually recently just got back from a tour with an artist named Palfu. And right before that, I recently played with Steve Lukather, the guitar player from Toto. So
okay.
I just want to ask you, like for a guy like you, when you go about like looking for people to work with, is it more impressive like to show you like what's on my Instagram, or would it be more impressive to like send hypothetically like a reel of like everything that I've done so far to like potentially show what I could do for a person like you?
I think you need to have that for sure. I think like something like an EPK. There's a couple of really cool companies out there now that can create really nice press kits. But I think as a gigging musician, you got to have that. Have your highlight reel, have your videos of you playing live, have songs that you played on in the studio, that you were the drummer on, all that stuff. I think that's important. Instagram is cool for, I think, a certain group of clientele and for clout, but I mean, you can get you a lot of work for sure. If you're like a content creator. I don't really do a lot of content creation. My books are so full just trying to keep up with my clients where I'm not going to take the time out and set up a camera and like do that. But I do try to incorporate some of it. But I think for somebody like yourself, yeah, man, I think you need both. Have your live videos of you, playing and showing different stuff. And then also have your professional reel for people like me, where I'm going to want to see what you've done on stage, what your stage presence is like. Yeah, it's going to go a bit deeper than just Instagram for me,
Gotcha. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Good stuff. Hit me up. Maybe we can work together sometime.
Amen.
Absolutely.
I'll be the connector. I want to ask, what is the most exciting project you're working on right now, or an artist that you're developing?
Yeah, I do have a really cool band that I'm really excited about developing here from Atlanta. They're called Frigga 5, Frigga 5, FIVE. They're a group of young kids out of Atlanta. They're like, it's kind of like Deftones meets like Incubus. something like that. We've released 3 singles this year. It's just been back to back releases since the first of the year. And we're doing really well, man. We just performed to a sold out show here at the Masquerade in Atlanta, 625 people. I mean, these kids have just released their first couple of songs, but they're getting a great response. And we've got like, I think almost 9,000 followers on Spotify off of 3 releases. We've already been featured on a couple of Spotify editorial playlists as well, where most of those followers came from. So yeah, we've got a new song out right now called Hello, but definitely if you're into like rock stuff like Deftones, Rage Against the Machine, Incubus, in that 90s kind of revival stuff, it's very cool. I think you'll dig it.
You had me at Incubus and Deftones, so
yeah, man. Yeah, you'll pick it up.
I'm the dinosaur with you, so I'm with that. I was just reminiscing about having to pass out flyers at shows. These guys talk about MySpace and YouTube and all these things, and I'm like, you don't understand. You had to go to the same club you were going to play at the week prior and try
post
to
flyers.
Post flyers and be like, we sound like, and the hustle was totally different. Daniel Parra.
It's so funny these days. Like it's awesome because the music I grew up with in high school is now very popular again, and this like late 90s, early 2000s sound is like very prominent even in pop music. But it's so funny, like some of the clients I have is like, oh, are you familiar with it? And they'll say like Seven Dust or something like that. I'm like, dude, yeah, I've got Seven Dust on CD in my attic, So it's just kind of funny, and Smashing Pumpkins has been a big influence for Frigga 5 as well. And me and the lead singer will sit down sometimes and he's like, oh man, this song and it's stuff like I grew up with. I'm like, dude, I've been listening to this song for longer than you've been alive, Caleb. It's funny. So
I love it.
Definitely getting up there now.
And I want to wish you just continued success. Keep grinding. And we will be checking out the bands you're working with, especially the one you just mentioned.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Check me out. I post stuff about my artists all the time. So that's pretty much all I do now is just like find really dope artists that I think are just got something special, and and I just put my time into them, and that's just my love. Like I could I still work with Sony. I'm still signed to Sony. I have writing sessions with them. I have some dates set up in April, and I did some in February, but it's just not my focus anymore. And it's just I find that quality of life is happy. I'm happier. I feel more fulfilled when I'm helping someone that maybe a lot of people haven't heard of, but my goal is to actually to lift them up and get the eyes on them and use my network, as you said, to because a lot of this I'll end here. You have to know when to play. It's like playing poker, man. This business and a lot of life is like you got to hold your cards until that right time, because if you show it too soon, it's just going to fall apart, and so even with these development projects, I might be super excited, like 10,000 followers in a couple of months is awesome, but it's just not big enough to take to some of my other counterparts and some of the other people in the business that can just go and take it anywhere we want to go. It's just, I have to create that. And then this is kind of what the last thing I want to say is like, you have to be outworking and have that vision and create the business for that major label to come in and put money behind it. Because think of yourself as a startup. No one's going to come in and give you $1 million when they don't know if the product even works, So it's like, you have to show the world or the record labels or whatever you want to say that the product works. And that's the trick with artist development. You got to show that there's a market for it. And, or not even just artist development, being an artist, being a producer, doing those things is something to think about. So yeah, I'll leave you guys with that, and hold your cards until the story's big enough so that it's undeniable, and then that's when you're going to get the really big payoff. So
absolutely priceless information right there. I mean, that's it, and that goes for your, the individuals in here that want to make the movie, that want to create the video game, that want to do the sound. Is like, the bottom line is you got to have a reason for a record label, a movie studio, whatever it is, to come behind you and fund it. So
yeah, and you gotta make 10, really crappy movies or really bad tracks or whatever it is you're doing. You got to do it badly a number of times so you can get better. Failure, it only leads to success. Failure is good as long as you're learning from it. So like, you know, if I showed you guys the first things I produced, you would laugh, you know, and I would laugh with you. But, you know, I kept at it, and now I can, like, you know, it's easy. So yes, absolutely.
Josh, I could talk to you all night. I'm going to reach out to you offline. I really do appreciate it. Wealth of knowledge, continued success, and thank you again.
As we conclude another enriching episode, we hope you found inspiration in the stories shared today. Let's take a moment to honor Yes I Can's role in bringing Breaking the Biz to life. Yes I Can's commitment to empowering young people with disabilities through education, advocacy, and mentorship shines brightly, paving paths of opportunity and dialogue. This podcast celebrates the organization's dedication to nurturing talent and facilitating impactful discussions. Breaking the Biz is more than a podcast. It's a part of Yes I Can's broader mission to amplify voices, dismantle barriers, and craft a world that's more inclusive and accessible for everyone. Each episode is a chapter in our shared narrative of progress, education, and empowerment, driven by the spirit of Yes I Can. Thank you for spending your time with us on Breaking the Biz. Continue to challenge the status quo and share stories that resonate. Until our paths cross again, let's keep transforming aspirations into achievements and infuse every endeavor with optimism. Here's to advancing the landscape of the entertainment industry, one episode at a time. I'm your host, William Felber. See you next time.